Hello.
Hello, Nancy. How are you?
Hi, Catherine. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Let me adjust this.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna twitch that curtain because the sun is just coming up in New.
Sounds good.
Good. It's a very cold, rainy day here.
Is it? So
Yeah.
I guess it's late fall, isn't it?
No, it's very early fall. It's
Early
late
fall.
summer.
Ah,
But
okay.
don't tell anybody in Wellington that because Wellington is like San Francisco. On a perfect day, it's a perfect day. Like
Right.
the most beautiful city in the world. But a lot of times it's rainy and extremely windy. So
And you've been
it's
in New Zealand for how long now?
well, I mean, if you're talking about living here, I've had a
Uh-huh.
home here with my husband for 35 years.
Oh, okay.
And when we got married, we decided to live in both countries. It wasn't easy, but it was a good decision.
Hmm.
We found our time here getting shorter and shorter with more of our commitments in the States.
Hmm.
So suddenly we were only spending like 3.5 months here rather than 6 months a year. And then COVID came down and we happened to be here. And it
Ah,
was the safest and sanest
oh,
country in the
yes.
world. And we said,
Absolutely.
we're crazy. We're crazy to go back to the States. And we've been here now, what, 18 months? It's been
Wow.
absolute, but great. It's been, I
Yeah.
hate to gloat about lockdown and COVID because so many people have suffered so terribly.
Um,
But honestly, we've been COVID free here since last September.
yep. Yep.
And as a doctor yourself, the protocols that were put in place by Jacinda Ardern, everybody's dream interview.
Just amazing. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. She just said, "And we're going to go hard, and we're going to go fast. We're going to close our borders," and everybody sucked it up and got on board and worked like a team. And look at the result:
Yeah.
25 deaths, the whole country. Isn't
Just
that amazing?
just amazing, just
Yeah.
amazing, and what good fortune for you to be, you could have been in one of two places and for you to be there, and I see the pictures of people going back to what feels like normal life, and I wish that the rest of the world could model their policies after New Zealand. So I'm
Yeah. But
very
you know
fortunate.
what? I mean, you look at the United States, and every state has a different kind of government, and it's huge. And but the hardest thing I think to take for me as a citizen who is, I'm enough of a patriot to love my country, and
Yeah.
I'm a dual citizen now, by the way.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I mean, it was heartbreaking to see what was happening politically
Yeah.
in the United States.
Yeah.
So come on, Uncle Joe and Aunt Kamala.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you so, so much for your time. I really appreciate this, and I wanna double check that the hour is okay for you?
Oh yeah, it's fine. I mean,
Okay.
I'm looking at myself in the shot, and I'm thinking, well, it doesn't look like you did too much makeup, but I do. It took a
You
while.
look great. You look great.
Yeah, but
So,
no, this is good.
perfect, and, I don't know how much was shared to you about the background.
I read the
Um
whole thing, which
Oh,
was
good.
really interesting. I just had like 5 minutes when I got on. I said, I'm just going to read this whole thing.
Yeah.
I was very impressed, and I'm very sorry that it's taken you since before Christmas to
That's okay.
to get an interview with me.
That's okay.
So,
Well,
what I
great.
could think I think what I was excited about was you as an orthopedic surgeon, also taking and being wed to a physician also. Um, Taking the overview look about women in the workplace like that, and the story about having the female pilot, and saying, there's a story here.
Yes, and it was years in the making before I decided to launch the podcast. And I didn't even know what a podcast was when I first thought of just the commonalities that women have, even in disparate fields. And so, it was just good timing last year when I had started to research how do I create a podcast? They don't teach us that in school, and so lockdown happened, and it was one of those silver linings where all of a sudden my elective surgeries were shut down for some time. And then I realized that after moping for about a week, that everybody else was stuck at home too, and individuals who normally wouldn't have a lot of time to give a podcast all of a sudden did. And so it was one of the silver linings of the last year. I'm just very just honored and humbled to talk to so many different women, including yourself, that I normally maybe wouldn't cross paths with in my work as a physician. So well, I don't know. You're an athlete, and so so I do cross paths with
I was
athletes,
going to
but
say, by the way, can you give me some free advice on my back?
anytime, anytime. And so I like to. I obviously have questions I want to have thought about that I want to ask you, but I also really love to have it feel a little bit conversational.
Right.
And as I tell my guests, I like it to feel, thinking back to when I thought of it with the pilot, like if she just had a couple minutes and we could sit down and have coffee and just chat, or if we meet another woman at a cocktail party, you find out that you both have similarities in being women in male dominated fields. Like that's what I would love for it to feel like. So,
Great, we'll do that. How much
all
time do we
right.
have?
So, an hour, is that good for you?
Sure.
Okay, and sometimes it ends up being a little bit less, and I definitely try to respect your time and not go over. So it's somewhere between, usually 35, 45 minutes in total.
Good. Okay, and I'm going to take a pound of flesh at the end and ask some advice.
Absolutely.
Just 5 minutes. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, no
Athletes
problem.
can't resist talking to orthopedic
I'm
surgeons.
happy to. Yeah, so after
Yeah,
we
and
wrap up, we'll take time to chat.
yeah, because the reason you couldn't get an interview with me is that I had an accident. I wasn't
Oh
sick,
dear. Oh.
and it was my fault. So it'll make you
Oh.
laugh and it'll make you cry.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, but I'm in great physio now, and all the X-rays and scans are so far good. And
Okay.
but I am going to ask your advice, especially as a woman.
Absolutely.
Especially as a
Absolutely.
woman. All right.
Okay, we'll do. We'll do. All right. So then we'll pause for a second. I will have done an intro for you, and then we'll just launch in.
Okay, just one thing, Nancy. Remember,
Yes.
I was not the first woman to run the Boston Marathon. I was the first woman to officially register and run.
Okay.
The whole incident was over those 261 bib numbers. Okay.
Okay. We'll
Okay,
do.
great.
Yes,
Great.
absolutely. Hello, Kathrine. I am so excited to have you on with me today. I know that we have so much to talk about.
Nancy, it's wonderful to be here, and I'm coming to you, 5,000 miles away from New Zealand, and I know there's a story there for everybody because of this COVID pandemic. So we can talk away on a lot of issues.
Absolutely. I always love to start with just going way back with my guests. I think origin stories are wonderful and so telling. And I would love to know about your childhood. I am curious what it was like to be 7-year-old Kathrine.
I am so glad you asked this question because I start every single speech, and I do a lot of speeches. I started with the story of my mom and dad because they empowered me so much that I should be the darn president of the United States. I mean, everybody has all these humble backgrounds about, how they were beat up and everything. Mine was really amazing. And I wish every parent could be like mine were. But basically, first of all, I was a kid who loved to play, and I had an older brother, 3 years older. But the important thing is that my parents always raised us alike, and there was no favoritism given to my brother or to me, and there
Mhm.
was no girly stuff. Everybody had to pull their own weight. I was a family. We were a family of pioneers. Came to the United States in 1723.
Wow.
As religious persecutees, we were Protestants in a Catholic world, and looking for not only a better life, but land and prosperity. And those people worked hard, and then they began homesteading west. So hardship was nothing to them, and determination, and almost heroism was a part of the story because you had no failure for trying. You only had failure for not trying. And so that was the way I was raised. My mom also worked full time and would always pull me aside and say, you're going to, no matter what you do, you're going to get a university education, and you're always going to be able to support yourself. My father was a military guy, a big deal colonel, but both of them came from little small town farming backgrounds. And they were out seeing the big wide world, and they always passed that on to us. There was also huge love of travel and international acceptance of people of all races, colors, etc. My father was mildly a racist, but he kind of got over that as he got older.
Sometimes
Mostly.
a lot of our parents, we look at them and we say, you can't really say that,
Yeah,
Same boat.
but he was fair. But my parents
Yeah.
are fair. But the biggest story of all, I think, that I've told it a million times, is that when I was 12 years old, prepubescent, going into high school, because I was not only a year, they started me in school at 5, and so that I was a year ahead of everybody, or behind everybody, whatever. And in high school, then I was put into a fast stream. So I was with a 12-year-old with 18-year-olds, and it was such a scary situation for me. But my school had something called a field hockey team. And I didn't know that, but I did see cheerleaders, and they were pretty and popular. So I wanted to be one. And I told my dad, I'm going to try out for the cheerleader squad when I go to high school. And he said, oh, honey, you don't want to be a cheerleader. Cheerleaders cheer for other people. You want people to cheer for you. And life is on the field. Life is to participate, not to spectate. Cheerleaders spectate. And he said, you should run a mile a day and make the field hockey team in your high school. And I said, a mile. And he said, come on, I'll show you how to do it. It's not about going fast. It's about just finishing. And I did it the first time out. And of course I felt like I could do anything. And I ran a mile every single day that hot summer in Washington, D.C.
Oh,
And
wow.
by the autumn, I was still a skinny prepubescent little girl, but I had run a mile a day, and sitting next to the 18-year-old, I knew he hadn't run a mile a day. And I felt like I had a victory nobody could take away from me.
Yeah.
And that has lasted me, Nancy, 63 years.
Wow.
Every day I run, I have the sense of empowerment, and it has given me everything, the magic to really try and take on the impossible and be fearless. People say, how are you so fearless? I say, well, because if you take the first step, you can take the next one. So that is the 7 to 12-year-old childhood of Kathrine that changed my life.
That's amazing. I see a common theme among my guests, and just about everyone had parents or a parent who just did not treat them differently. If they had siblings, whether they were boys or girls, brothers or sisters, just the theme of equity in their upbringing, I think really drives that motivation to believe that you can do anything that you want to.
Absolutely.
And as I'm sure you're not surprised, I would like to go to 1967
Oh yeah.
as well as you have a million times, as well as the time leading up to that. So as we were chit-chatting a little bit beforehand, you were not the first woman to complete the Boston Marathon. You were the first woman to wear the bib and officially complete it.
Yes,
And
and also there were about 6 women throughout history. I, of course,
Mhm.
wasn't to know this, and most people even today don't know it. If they read my book, Marathon Woman, they will know it. But there were other women in history who had run marathons, not
Mhm.
officially, not with much fanfare.
Mhm.
So it wasn't as though I was the first. And in fact, the woman who ran Boston the year before took a lot of pressure off me, because when I decided I wanted to run, I said, well, it's no big deal. It's been done before. And it was my running the Boston Marathon, and I'll tell you how I got there, but was a reward from my coach.
Mhm.
And the story is that at Syracuse University, where I went to study journalism, because I knew that once I got out of high school, there weren't going to be any sports for me. That intercollegiate sports simply did not exist at Syracuse University for women. For
Mhm.
men, a powerhouse,
Mhm.
25 sports, all of them scholarship deep. And oddly, I thought that it was women's fault that they didn't have sports. I thought, well, why don't these women get it? Why don't they create sports? Why don't they have sports for women? So yeah, right. So I decided I would ask the men's track coach if I could run on the men's cross country team. And he sort of laughed and he said, no, it's against the rules, but you could come and work out with the team. I don't care if you want to come work out with them. He thought I'd never show up. And so I did show up and he was very surprised. And out there that day, the guys were wonderful, by the way, truly wonderful. And running, they're wonderful. And the volunteer coach was there, who was also the university mailman, who happened to be an ex-marathoner. And I was 19 and he was 50 and he seemed ancient to me, but I could tell he was in pretty good nick, even though at that time he was injured and thought he was never going to run again. He was the most welcoming of all. And he saw how slow I was, and even injured, he could keep up with me. So he led me around the cross country course every day. And to keep me going, he would regale me with stories of his, past, which was the Boston Marathon. And he had run 15 of them. And every day was another Boston story. And one day I got really cranky and told him, let's quit talking about it and run it. And he said, oh, it's impossible for a woman to run it. And I said, well, you're telling me every day I can be really good. And he said, yeah, but not a marathon. I mean, women are too weak and too fragile. And he believed all the myths, that existed in those days. And as a physician, this is something we really should talk about, Nancy, because these myths still prevail hugely around the world, which is that not only are women weak and fragile, but that they don't count in the physical sense. That we are total victims of our biology, which until 50 years ago was true, but also that that they are really incapable, that they're going to turn into men, that what they do if in sports is socially objectionable to sweat, and that their uteruses are going to fall out. I mean, the myths are incredible, and those myths were very prevalent in 67. When I was, running, and I think Arnie had heard them all, but was really afraid to kind of articulate them. And he didn't want to be blamed for,
your uterus falling out.
Yes, like, oh my God, there it is. What do I do now? So we argued, and finally he said, if you show me in practice that you can run the marathon, I'd be the first person to take you. So we went out to run it, after many weeks of practice. And I felt really great at the end of 26.2 miles. And I said, let's keep going. Let's run another 8 miles, because I don't believe we've run far enough. And he said, no, you can't run another, 5 miles, 8 Ks. And I said, well, can't you? And he said, well, I guess. But anyway, off we went. And we finished this 31-mile workout, 50 Ks. It was essentially an ultra run. And he passed out when I hugged him and said, we're going to Boston. And when he came to, the first thing he said is, women have hidden potential in endurance and stamina. And we had discovered this, that the guys wouldn't come and run with me if it was longer than 15 miles. They thought I was a crazy person. But I knew that the longer it got, the better I could keep up with the guys. And this is something that's really profound right now. Again, physiologically, women's capability is superior in endurance and stamina. We're only beginning to discover it when we're seeing women winning ultra races outright. And I often say, listen, if it doesn't make us better, or are you better, it makes us different. And you guys have the speed, the power, the strength. We have the endurance, stamina, flexibility, and balance. We make a pretty darn good team. And why don't we start now, and we are creating sports which enhance women's capabilities and show them. And again, if you create the opportunity, people will take that opportunity and excel. So there's wonderful, wonderful stories about women in endurance activities. And anyway, he was then totally convinced, like so many people of anything, when they're shown it and they experience it themselves, they then become believers. And Arnie was very, very proud of me, but absolutely insisted that we officially sign up for the race. He said, it's a serious race. You don't mess with Boston, and insisted that I register. And I looked at the entry form. There was nothing about gender on the entry form. I said, there's nothing about gender here. And he said, of course not. Nobody would believe a woman would want to run, much less could run. And I said, yeah, but maybe it's against the rules. There's got to be a reason. And I said that, maybe we shouldn't even register. Roberta Gibb the year before just went and jumped out of the bushes and ran. He said, you don't do that. This is the Boston Marathon. I said, well, okay, let's check the rule book. Nothing about gender in the rule book. Nothing about this being a men's only race. And I said, oh, geez. I said, I'm going to be noticed when I go to Boston wearing a bib. And he said, I know. And I'm proud of you. Isn't that great?
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Anyway,
is
so
amazing.
we sent our $2 in, but I signed my name KV Switzer. That's the point that probably made the difference. The officials saw the KV and they thought it was a man. Why do I sign my name that way? Because in journalism school, what did I want to be? I wanted to be J.D. Salinger and E.E. Cummings and T.S. Eliot. But also, I started signing my name that way when I was 12, along with the running business, because my dad misspelled my name on my birth certificate. He left the E out of the Kathrine. And therefore, my name, all my life, I've been cursed with people correcting it and therefore misspelling it. And it's quite heartbreaking to, win the New York City Marathon and have a big trophy with your name on it misspelled, So I started signing my name with my initials. Well, what happened, it was a collision of coincidence. And the officials gave me bib number 261, which I happen to have here. There we go.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I wish the podcast listeners could see that. Oh, I'll have to post this image.
All right, I'll send you a photo. Here, now you can do a screenshot right there.
There we go. Okay, here we go. Screenshot it is. And
okay.
Got it.
Okay. So when we got to Boston, it was snowing and sleeting, terrible, terrible weather. The next coincidence was that instead of looking really cute in my shorts and top, I had to wear my baggy gray sweats, which we were going to throw away as we warmed up normally. And from a distance, we all looked alike. We looked like refugees. Everybody wore everything they had: scarves, hats, gloves, plastic bags, windbreakers. And it was really miserable. Headwind, about 34 degrees, sleet. It was the worst conditions up to 2018 for the Boston Marathon. And anyway, so all the guys, again, wonderful to me. And what happened is the gun went off. Down the street we went. Everybody was cheering and patting me on the back as they went by, saying, go for it. Wish my wife were here. Wish she'd run. Wish my girlfriend would run. And give me some tips. I want to get her started. And, it was happy. It was really great. And as it almost always is at the start of a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And then the press truck came through and went past us and slowed down when they saw me in the race and began filming. And we were waving at them, nightly news. Hi, Mom. and our 2 seconds of fame, right? But alongside then of the press truck, right alongside of it, was a bus. And on the bus were officials. And on this bus, one of the officials, Jock Semple, who happened to be the race co-director, a guy with a very short fuse, a feisty Scotsman, whom the Boston Marathon was his baby, and he hated people making fun of his race. And people on the bus, the press, were teasing him and saying, there's a girl in your race, Jocko, and I wonder what her mother calls her. And because it was KV. And he just, he had been so frustrated with the weather, trying to get the race off on time. And as they say, he was an angry guy anyway. He just jumped off the bus and went after me. And I didn't see him because the press truck was in front of us and he came running up behind me fast. And I heard him at the last moment because I heard leather shoes on the pavement. And I turned around just at the last moment. And, he grabbed my shoulders as I turned and I looked right in his face. We probably were only 2 inches apart. And I'd never seen a face that angry and snarling. And he screamed at me, get the hell out of my race and give me those numbers. And then started clawing at my shirt, trying to pull off my bib numbers. And I jumped back like that. And he came back again after me, missed again, then grabbed my sweatshirt and started pulling on the one on the back. And the picture I showed you when you do your screenshot thing, see that rip on the corner is the one he got on my back. So it flapped in the race, but I kept the numbers. So what happened next was that Arnie was screaming, leave her alone, she's okay. I trained her. That's my coach, my little mailman guy. And he said, you stay out of this. And Arnie went to grab him and he smashed Arnie. I mean, Arnie was just a little guy. And then my boyfriend, who is another story why he was in the race. But anyway, he was running alongside of me, 235-pound ex All-American football player, threw a cross shoulder block into the official, just charged him, boom, and sent him flying. This was captured in a press truck right there in front of us. And then Arnie screamed, "Run like hell." And down the street we went. We were terrified. I was terrified. Tom, my boyfriend, was steam coming out of his ears, but I was, wiping the tears away. I was just so scared and humiliated. And, it's, Nancy, it's funny in the retelling, isn't it? The boyfriend saves the girlfriend. But it was a horrible incident. I just turned 20. It was my first big race, and I knew I could do it. I was welcomed by all the guys, and now this getting pilloried by, attacked by the official and pilloried by the press. The press truck stayed with us for the longest amount of time, kept saying, what are you trying to prove? When are you going to drop out? When are you going to quit? You're going to quit, right? When are you going to quit? They wanted me to quit then, right? So they could get it on camera. I said, I am not quitting. I am not quitting. Finally, they left. And that's when I turned to my coach and said, I'm going to finish this race on my hands and my knees if I have to. And then that was it. That was the big, big turning point. Actually, in my life, it was sort of my defining moment, if you will, because not running the race, but making the decision to finish the race. And of course, that the bib number 261 then has gone on to mean a number meaning fearless, and created, and we'll talk about it later, but created a whole global nonprofit called 261 Fearless, because that moment made me feel fearless, and it changed my life and millions of women's lives. But who was to know it then? Nobody.
Right.
I was just determined to finish in the cold, soaking, freezing rain, snow, slush, and get the job done. Another thing happens, as a doctor, we could also talk about this, is that Heartbreak Hill, about 21 miles in the race. As you know, at that point, you're on fumes because you've used up all your glycogen. And after murdering the official, every way a person could be murdered, at that point, suddenly I was no longer angry. I realized he was just a product of his time. Anger, emotions, everything sort of flows out of you. And after being momentarily angry at other women, wondering why they weren't there, how could they be so stupid as to miss a wonderful opportunity to feel wonderful through running? And if they were there, these kinds of things wouldn't happen. I said, duh. They're not there because they haven't had the opportunity. Right. And they believe all the myths. So it's up to me now to pick up the responsibility and do my best to change that situation. And that was the life plan. There you go. Sorry, you got the long version here.
I'll take any version. I love it. And so then the motivation for going into the race, it sounds like it was not so much that you wanted to be the first. It was just because you could. Because you could.
Yeah, the motivation for going into the race was a reward from Arnie. I had proved in practice that I could do the distance. We ran 31 miles, but now here was my reward. And it was, and many people who run the Boston Marathon train, and they finally make their qualifying time. And then when you meet them, they said, I'm here now. I'm not going to compete hard. I'm just going to run because I've trained so hard to get here. I'm going to just enjoy the experience. But that wasn't my goal. My goal was that I wanted to run. I wanted to comport myself well. But I wasn't there to make a political statement at all. All of that changed, though. Then it became very, very political. Mm-hmm. And it's not what I wanted, but it's what I needed to do. And, my dad had always told me, if you're going to start something, you'd better finish it. You got to take responsibility for your action. And as negative as it was, Nancy, it gave me the plan for my life. It really did. It gave me the incentive, the motivation to do it, but it also gave me the passion. And I saw the real crying need. I mean, women just were afraid to do anything adventuresome or bold, and nobody would give them the opportunity to prove what they felt were their limitations otherwise. So you're going to feel limited until you take the opportunity or somebody gives it to you. And it's very hard to take it when you don't understand how to do that. Mm-hmm. Again, that's another responsibility we all have, is to take somebody by the hand and give them the opportunity.
Absolutely. I found it interesting that the man who tried to stop you, literally stop you from racing, Jock, you later became close friends with. And
Yes.
you talked a little bit about forgiveness and that he was a product of the time. What does it take to change somebody's mind about a woman's place and where a woman should be and shouldn't be, and how do you make that jump from one person to an entire culture?
You keep showing up and you keep doing it. You, if you can, work with other people who are like-minded and
Mhm.
expand your community. In my case, I started very small and created a club of runners in Syracuse, New York, with 6 people showing up on a Tuesday night. And by the end of the summer, we had 100 every Tuesday night, which grew into learning sponsorship and marketing, and eventually wound up being a program in 27 countries. But I'll tell you that story in a minute. But how you do it is you show up and and be an example. Um, Other women began coming to Boston. We would write to each other, if you go, I'll go. And pretty soon there were a core group of us who were running and running really, really well. And we would just go, we'd stand on the sidelines. Most of the race would go by. We would jump in the race and we would comport ourselves really well. And we had this unspoken agreement between us that no matter what, we would finish, and no matter what, we would try to finish without looking disgusting and throwing up and dragging ourselves in. That we would we'd try to, unfortunately, run on behalf of women first, and then athletes secondarily, and then we began doing our homework and we began legislating. It took 5 years, but we got official in the Boston Marathon, and it was Jock Semple who had to welcome us into that race. So when you talk about forgiveness, Jock was mad at me for 5 years. And in 1972, when we were made official in the race, he had steam coming out of his ears. And
I
he said,
bet.
and he said, if women are going to run in my race, this has been mandated by the Athletic Federation. He said, they're going to run in my race. They're going to have to meet the men's qualifying time. We said, okay, we will. And there were 8 of us who could do it. Eight of us showed up. And then he suddenly said, wow, they ran really well. Like, no kid, he hadn't been watching us for 5 years. See, sometimes it's like Arnie, who couldn't believe a woman could do it. Then when I ran him into the ground, he said, oh my God, I completely misunderstood. It's like Jock suddenly noticed us. But still he had, he didn't forgive me still. I got a trophy in that race, okay? I was got third place, right? And when he presented me the trophy, it was broken. And he felt really bad about it. Okay, I could tell. I said, don't worry, it's okay. And he said, send it back, we'll have it replaced. He said, but I've been really mad at you for 5 years and you deserve a broken trophy. And then the next year he gave me a big kiss on the cheek, and the TV cameras captured it all. And we became good friends after that. And I went to
That's
see
amazing.
him. Yeah, we would do things like this together and panels together and everything. Everybody loved the story because he's so feisty. But he and I went to see him just a few hours before he died, and we had a very, very good talk. People say, whoa, that's a lot of forgiveness. And I said, you know what? How can you not love somebody who has not only changed your life so fundamentally, but has given the women's rights movement and the civil rights movement one of the greatest photos and example in the world? And he's changed millions of women's lives, and he's made the worst thing in my life become the best thing in my life.
I think that's something, as everyone goes through the ups and downs of life. I think there's so much to learn from that in thinking about your perspective and your mindset when you're in those lows. It's not all highs as we kind of go through life. It can, life kind of just goes up and down and up and down. And I love how you describe that, because a lot of times when we're in the downs, we need to look around and see what this is teaching us, or what it's showing us, or what it is leading us to as our next step.
But
Yes.
Nancy, that's absolutely true. It's just that the adversity creates the opportunity, because
Yeah.
it wouldn't be an adversity if there weren't an opportunity. And so you told me before we got started here, here you are, orthopedic surgeon. Now the elective surgeries are canceled because of COVID. And that gave you the impetus to start this podcast, which in the fullness of time, now we don't know this for sure, but in the fullness of time may reach and influence more people than your surgeries do. And so it could be the best thing that ever happened. So COVID, created opportunities for you. And many people out there, of course, who are suffering, and my sympathies are with them entirely. But also many people have told me about new things they have invented, new ways of working, how the world is going to be changing, pivoting, and making the most of this. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And you mentioned pivoting. That's one thing I wanted to ask you about. Your story is a story of one, among other things, of perseverance. But on the flip side, how does one know when it's time to turn around and walk away and pivot?
Well, in terms of my story, I did a lot of pivoting. I was denied opportunities to run, and I was banned from the Athletic Federation. And basically, just sticking with it, but also people denying the fact that women wanted to run. So instead of listening to them, going and getting major commercial sponsorship. That's one of the biggest things I did. And in '72, I was at the Munich Olympics working as a journalist, which was a horrific experience, of course, because 11 Israeli athletes were murdered. So talk about being disillusioned. I mean, I spent the next 6 months in Europe, bumming around Europe, trying to get over what happened. And then coming to the conclusion, look, that sport is political, sport is commercial. So what good can you make of this? And I picked up on the commercial thing, which was, hey, I could write all the letters in the world, go to all the committee meetings in the world, and it's not going to change the status for women's running. But if I had a major multi-million-dollar commercial sponsor that is willing to sponsor women's only events, I bet I could change the world. And so I wrote the proposal and I took it to Avon Cosmetics, and they hired me. And pretty soon I had a program of women's only races, 400 of them in 27 countries. So I had the data and the statistics to take to the International Olympic Committee to prove that women's marathon deserved to be in the Olympic Games. I mean, nobody would have believed that. Everybody said I was smoking poppy. It wasn't going to happen. And every federation I went to, federation after federation after federation, except for the US, Canada, UK, and New Zealand, okay? All the others said this is not going to be successful and women are not going to run. And I said, yeah, but if you create the opportunity and make it welcoming, they will come. And so they said, well, it's not going to happen. And I said, well, I'm going to organize it, and I hope you'll support it. Because he said, okay, well, go ahead and organize it. No, nobody's going to show up. Nancy, they showed up in their thousands. And there are thousands. Give people a chance. They will always emerge. And so that was a real negative, a horrible negative that I changed into a positive. And honestly, I kind of go through my whole life. It seems like everything I've done has been trying to correct the injustice. Then 261 Fearless, for instance, was founded. I'll hold it up there a little longer. 261 Fearless was founded after the notion for it was after the Olympic Games. We got the women's marathon in the Olympic Games. I thought, that's it. I'll never do better than that. That was my life work. And then I thought, that was really great, Kathrine. You changed the landscape. It was on television. 2.2 billion people saw women running. They understand now how we can do it. Okay, they understand, but who's giving those women out there, millions and millions of women, most women, the opportunity to do it? They're too afraid to leave their house. Either maybe they're under a burqa in Afghanistan, or maybe they're in a domestic abuse situation living next door to you. How are you going to give them the chance to be empowered? And I really thought, I don't know if I can do this. And basically, I got together with younger women who told me about something called the internet. and how and cell phones, and how we could actually connect with these women and give them a welcoming opportunity to come and join in a safe community in different community clubs for women only around the world. We created 261 Fearless, which essentially now in 12 countries. We're only 4 years old, but we're in 12 countries already, where women will come to our club, non-judgmental, and everybody is welcome. Walk, run in a safe community, and put all the crap of your life behind you for an hour a week, and start feeling empowered and full of self-esteem, because running does that. And it's cheap, and it's easy, and it's accessible. You don't have to have any money. And it's really, really working. It's that 12-year-old girl running the mile a day all over again. And backing it up now with really good educational programs, empowerment talks. And we'd love to have people join us, 261fearless.org. Come take a look, and we'll get you there.
I love it. So you have made so many pivots, and you've really just been such an advocate for women and have touched so many individuals' lives. I mean, it sounds like you couldn't have possibly have known that in those first steps of running that Boston Marathon. You were only a college junior, is that correct?
That's correct.
You were a year from graduating, but to enter that and not at the moment know that you literally have the weight of the world of women's running and women's athletics and women's rights on your shoulders. I love one of the quotes that you had posted on your site and that you wrote about just having that sense of responsibility to others in helping you continue on. And did you feel that weight of external pressure, and how much of that balanced with your internal pressure to keep on?
Well, that's a huge question. Yeah, I still have this weight of responsibility. And yeah, I think, is it a curse and a burden sometimes? Yeah, but it's also a privilege. And now what I've decided to do with that, of course, is with 261 Fearless, is to bring in younger women, who are, I mean, our leadership in the nonprofit is unbelievable. They're like between 35 and 55, and they're at the top of their game, and they're so savvy, and they know everything, and they're, they can do their own cell phones. They don't need a 12-year-old to show them how. And if I can I keep giving them my vision, but they have a lot of their own. And I've often said that talent's everywhere if you only give it the opportunity. And basically, we as parents always should do that, but also in business, medicine, communication, whatever, passing it on to others, your direct reports, both upward ones and downward ones, and they'll always show you up. And it's great just to give them an idea, and they'll come back to you with, how about if we did it this way? And wow, I never even thought of that. So that's one of the most important things. So my team is helping me sleep at night now, which is really great. And they're very, they have high energy as well. That was another thing. I was blessed and cursed with high energy. And often in the workplace, when I was a executive in creating the running program and in a big company, I got very short with people. I'm ashamed of myself because they couldn't keep up, and they weren't willing to stay in the office till 9 o'clock every night. And I didn't have that depth of vision for them. And I've learned an awful lot about working harder, not working harder, but working more efficiently and things like that. So I'm not sure I've answered your question, but how did when it first happened, after the Boston Marathon, the mail that rolled in was really pretty wicked. It was a lot of hate mail, but there was a lot of good mail. And my dad I overheard my dad say to somebody once, he said something about my daughter. He said, there are two kinds of kids in the world. You take one into a room full of horse shit, and the kid goes, "Ugh!" And he said, and then you take another kid into the room. They said, there's got to be a pony here someplace. And he said, that's my daughter. So so basically I would throw the hate mail away. My roommates would sit around with our housemates and read it, and we would laugh, and one of them would shout out, "Hey, there's a butcher here in Alabama who wants to marry you." and, and, so we'd throw away the cruddy mail, and we would keep the good mail and pass it
Yeah.
around. Um, and it was really sweet. People, uh, I mean, the horrible stuff was like, you're going to fry in hell, and you should be home making dinner for your husband. But the good mail was, my wife and I saw your picture in the paper, and I want you to know it's on our mantelpiece and will stay there forever.
Uh,
And then some guys like from Vietnam, just really saying, hey, I used to run when I was at Columbia or Yale or whatever, and here I am in Nam, and would you write to me? I just love running. It changed my life, and I think it's really cool that a girl's running, that kind of stuff. And so yeah, those things sustained me too. But it was actually then beginning to organize that
mhm.
helped me. And I mean, you ask anybody, you ask Gloria Steinem, anybody, they'll tell you it's going to the other people, women especially. I had no other women. I was organizing with men, but they were sympathetic. Men runners are different, and they are very, very sensitive new age guys, and very egalitarian. And they would help me organize, and they love being, part of something organized. And then they would be very supportive in bringing their girls, their children, daughters, wives, and girlfriends. So that was good.
It's really a beautiful thing to see when you can not only rely on your community and your fellow women around you, but that you can also look to the men as advocates and allies. And I think that's so important to have the buy-in of not just the women around you, but the men and the women to help change attitudes on the whole. And I think that's one of the things that we in orthopedic surgery we have a little ways to go, is changing some of the bias that is still occurring with women.
Hey, look, let me ask you a
Yes,
question though about that. Okay.
please.
So I tell this very frankly, is that actually after the Boston Marathon incident, for several years, women were the worst to me. Okay. They
Mhm.
wrote the most vicious letters, and they were the people who tried to run me off the road. And I,
Wow.
I didn't understand that for a while until I realized, because Arnie and I would talk about it on the run. He said they're doing that because they're afraid of you. And I said, well, why are they afraid of me? And he said, because you're powerful, you're strong, you're free. They are not. And I said, but all they have to do is put on their shoes. And he said, I know that, you know that, they don't yet know that. And I
Mhm.
said, you know what, Arnie, when I'm 40, they're all going to be my best friends. And many of those women got back to me and said, I thought you were really terrible. And I couldn't believe what you're doing now. Running has changed my life. But women at first were hard. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering, and often, in business, in the corporation, there were plenty of executive women, not plenty of them. That was the problem. The few executive women there were, many of those were kind of queen bees.
Mhm.
You know, I paid the price, you will pay the price,
Mhm.
making it really tough on you, no
Mhm.
quarter. Um, and it's like working with a coach who is a negative coach. They're coaches who shame you and abuse you and tell you you're a piece of shit, that anybody can do this. And then there are other coaches that, come on, let's try it another way. I know you can do this. It's going to take time. Let's be patient. That's the kind of stuff you need. I'm
Mhm.
wondering, in your business, are the other women who are, let's say, known, powerful surgeons, do they make it tough on other women rather than
They
helping them?
Those women are out there.
Yeah.
And I would say it's not the majority. I think it's similar to your experience. It's not the majority, but I think that there is the feeling of being threatened, the queen bee phenomenon, that they wish to be the token female, and there's not enough room for another woman to succeed in the field. And also the sense of having, like you said, gone through the ringer to get there, and so everybody else should suffer as well. But I
Mhm.
will say that the majority, and more so, I think the majority of women that I encounter in my field, being only 6% female, um, It's been a really amazing community, and you start to really appreciate the importance of community. And I think about that a lot. But yet at the same time, that it's not only our fight. It's
That's
not
right.
just the women's fight. It's
Yeah,
everybody's.
it
And
is.
it whether it is in the world of running or in the world of orthopedics or with what we're sadly seeing in the US lately with I think worsened by the pandemic and other factors, the increase in hate crimes against Asian Americans and the Black Lives Matters movement. I think that it just extends so much beyond just gender. Um, that it is important for us to have community and have unity in approaching change. Um, so, which brings me to something else that I had come across being in a male dominated world for you as a woman. A lot of times, I think that we feel pressure, whether that's actually overt coming from the outside or from us ourselves internally, that we have to shed some of those qualities that are typically considered feminine to so called fit in, like wearing lipstick. So, talk to me about your relationship with lipstick leading up to the race.
I go nowhere without my lipstick. As you know, I emailed you this morning and I said, I'll be on time, but I got to go do my lipstick here. Mine isn't as dark as yours. I admire you very much for wearing that one. I backed off a little this morning because it's so early in the morning here. Just went for pink and not the big red. Hey, no, it was funny. When we were walking to the starting line of the Boston Marathon, my boyfriend turned to me and he said, "Oh my God," he said, "you were wearing lipstick." And I said, "So I always wear lipstick." And he said, "Take it off." He said, "Take it off. They're going to be able to see that you're a girl." I said, "I want them to know I'm a girl." I said, "I am not taking off my lipstick, you know." Also, it's funny about that. I don't think I've ever articulated this, but sometimes lipstick is like also an armor, you know,
Mhm.
or I don't know if you have power underwear, but
I do.
like
I do.
like like you've got it on, they don't know it. It's my
Yeah.
secret weapon, you know. Oh gosh. So yeah, no, I really emphasize the feminine, probably to a fault, because people always wanted me. Here comes the long distance runner. Oh my God, she's going to be a behemoth. She's going to look like a guy. Blah, 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 blah. And so instead of just being the way I wanted to be, I really overcompensated: fingernail polish, lipstick, lots of perfume, makeup, etc., because I wanted to disarm them. But I also was very proud of proving that you could be both. You can be anything you want to be. If I want to
Yep.
be ultra feminine and I can get out there and get really icky and sweaty for 26.2 miles, and the marathon is not pretty. I mean,
Yeah.
it really, um, it really will help relieve a lot of other women who are
Mhm.
fearful about
Mhm.
going into something that is traditionally masculine. So let's take the toughest sport, marathon running, and it's always been torturous looking, lots of blood and blisters and throwing up and all this kind of stuff. Let's change that image. So I would wear girly girl little tennis dresses and hair ribbons and always try to look as nice as possible. Was I suffering inside? Yeah, of course. But so does a ballerina, you know?
Mhm.
I watched Margot Fontaine. She was my greatest athletic model, on the stage dancing. She made something that is one of the most difficult things in the world look so beautiful. And I thought, to me, that was no different than marathon running. So that was kind of my image there.
I love it. I spend a lot of time on the slopes. I'm a snowboarder, and just the other day, you made me think of this. The other day, I was on the chairlift looking down, and that's something that women were a little bit later to come to. Now, of course, we've got amazing women athletes in the Olympics that are snowboarding as well. But I looked down and I saw this little girl. She could not have been more than 4, and she was snowboarding in a tutu, and
I love
I was
it.
like, I love it. That's the best. That is the best. It just says so much.
Yeah. Isn't that
So
great?
what is next? What is next? I mean, you've done so much, but I've got to know, what do you think is in the next phase of your life?
Well, I think, the hardest thing about one of the hardest things about starting 261 Fearless is the fact that it will not reach fruition until I'm dead. And so everything I have done in my life, I have been able to see a finite um, uh, conclusion. And that is like the next jumping off point, okay, for something. The 261 Fearless, um, yeah, are we in 12 countries and in 5 continents? Yes. Do we have 5,000 women? Yes. But we do not have 1,000,000 women yet. And my goal is to give every single woman on the planet an opportunity to experience movement and self-esteem. And I'm not going to see that in my lifetime. But we're going to come close. I'm 74 and I have to pass it off. The hardest thing for me to do has been to pass it off to these young women who are going to take it and they're running with
Mhm.
it. Okay.
Mhm.
They know more than I do, and they're stronger than I am now. And that's so that I would say that already is the conclusion. Having said that, I mean, there are other projects, like my book is being made into a film, which is going to be very, very
So
exciting.
exciting.
I know, so great. And other projects like that will be happening. But the big life project, probably 261 Fearless is it. I had always thought that my biggest accomplishment was being a major player and getting the women's marathon in the Olympic Games. But I think probably 261 Fearless is going to be it. But who knows? Maybe something else will emerge.
You
And
never know what life
you
is
know,
going to throw at you, right?
whoever would have thought that for 2 years we would be in this situation with this
Oh,
pandemic,
yeah.
and everything is changing. This is I don't know how old you are, but I'm guessing what, 45, maybe most.
47.
Okay. Well, because and I only said that not because of how you look, but because of your accomplishments. But this pandemic actually is your defining moment.
Yeah,
The defining moment, though, imagine for a kid who's 15,
yeah,
that is profound for them.
profound. Mhm.
Everything is changing. It kind of reminds me of my parents, who were, as I say, kind of small town farm kids. And it was World War II that was their defining moment,
Yeah,
changed the world.
yeah,
And so this is changing the world. And
yeah.
then who knows? I mean, in the next 20 or 30 years is what's happening out there, the interplanetary stuff. I mean,
Right.
to imagine that life on Earth is the only life in the world, you got to be kidding me.
Mhm. Yeah,
So it's going to be very, very exciting.
yeah.
And people should realize that if they're there for the moment, to involve themselves, commit, take responsibility, make it happen as well as it possibly can happen.
I always like to ask my guests as we wrap up advice for women who either want to follow in your footsteps or just want to thrive as a woman in a male dominated industry as they navigate bias and inequity. What lessons have come from your experience and these lessons from running and from being a nonprofit founder and a change maker? What kind of advice do you give these women? What's that one big piece of advice?
The biggest piece I have is not to be defensive. I mean, I usually don't put things in a negative term, but don't be defensive and think that it's not going to work. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of men in the world who want women to be successful. Meet them halfway, meet them halfway, talk about it, bring them on board, educate them. I used to be pilloried by the press for running. And all of the journalists who used to pillory me became my best friends. Not because I ever said to them, that was a horrible thing you said about me. I said, can I explain this to you? Let me just tell you where I am. How would you feel if that was your daughter? And this is what I'm trying to do. I got them on board and educated them. So basically reach out, help guys, to come to the table, help other women to come to the table, build your alliances, start small, but dream big, and take the steps that you need to do there. and realize that every negative and every no is also an open door someplace. That just if the person says no, or the person has a negative reaction, there's got to be a reason why. And a negative can be made into a positive, and a positive can be made into an opportunity, and an opportunity can be made into a business.
I love it. Thank you so much, Kathrine. I so appreciated having you on today, and I know the listeners will too.
And thank you so much. And thank you for everything you're doing. Be careful snowboarding. We don't
I will.
wait, see, here's me immediately.
I will. Thank you. All right. That was amazing. That was wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. You know, it's really funny how your prejudices kick in. As soon as you said you were snowboarding, I said, oh my God, what is an orthopedic surgeon doing snowboarding? Isn't that
Right.
that amazing? As if you snowboarding gives you more inside knowledge on skiing accidents, because you're out there, you understand what it feels like and why it's important to people.
Yes.
And the kinds of injuries that can occur. So
yeah, here in the Pacific Northwest, we have to get through our 9 months of rain somehow, and so a lot of people do go up to the mountains to pass the time when it's cold and rainy. I do take care of a lot of, and in fact, I am a volunteer doctor at the clinic that's at the base of the mountain, and so they give me a radio. They call me for backup if the emergency doctors there need anything, and I snowboard all day. So I consider it working.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I certainly always worry about when I see people when they're having a bad ski accident, how they get them down and how they get them on the stretcher and ski them down, and thinking, oh my God, when somebody breaks a leg or a back or something, how you even put them on the stretcher is
it's
critical.
Bumpy.
Yeah,
it's bumpy. Yeah. So
you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Right?
Exactly. Well, tell me your questions.
Okay,
like tell me what happened.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So for my 74th birthday, which was on January 5th, I had a fundraiser going for the month before.
That's my son's birthday.
Is Capricorn, true and true, right? Very determined little kid, right?
He is.
Yeah. So I had this fundraiser. I said, if you guys raise $3,261, I will jump off the Wellington high jump board, which is in Wellington Harbor. So Wellington, we're on the ocean, so there's a big harbor there, and since a lot of people were jumping off the dock anyway into the water, they put up a high dive platform. Okay. You're not allowed to dive off of it, but you can jump off of it. There's a lower board and a higher board. And the higher board is really quite high. And so I said, that's a big kind of cute video. I'll jump off of it on my 74th birthday. They'll never raise the money, but they did raise the money. So now I had to jump, right?
Oh dear.
So I went out and eyeballed it, and Roger said, my husband said, it's pretty damn high. And I said, oh, piece of cake. I did this all the time as a kid. He said, yeah, but you're 74 years old. I said, well, what difference would that make? Duh. So the day we went, we also got a young guy across the street to come over just in case there was an accident, to jump in and pull me out. Because my husband's 81. I mean, he wasn't going to be able to jump in and save me. But when we got there, it was 5:30 in the evening, which was fun. We were going to go to a bar afterwards and have a few beers. The tide was out. So there was plenty of water in the harbor, but the distance from the board to the water surface was probably about an additional 12 feet. So now it's like jumping off a 3 or 4 story building.
Wow.
And I said, oh my God, I said, this is really high. And I said, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to do it. Wrong. I could have backed out and just apologized on the video to everybody and said, I will personally contribute the $3,261. I'll match your fund, but I'm 74 and it's a stupid thing to do. But I didn't say that. I said, I told the people, you sometimes have to step outside of your comfort zone. Anyway, jumped. And instead of going straight down because of the height, I kind of went in and I landed on the small of my back.
Oh dear.
And I swear to God, I thought I broke it. I had never felt pain like that before. And it just shot through me. And I said, oh my God. And then when I surfaced, though, I said, first thing I thought is, the cold is the best thing that can be happening to it right now.
Yeah.
And if I can move my legs and to swim over to the ladder, which I could, I said, okay,
Yeah.
then you haven't broken your back.
Yeah.
And I managed with help to get out of the water, and lay on a park bench. And everybody was running over to say, you did it, you did it, you did it. And I said, listen, I'm not buying beers tonight. I got to go home. And
Yeah.
went immediately to a doctor the next morning. It was late by that time. I couldn't go that night. And I mean, I had to lie flat on the floor. You know, the only way I could do this. And Roger got me into a car, got me to the doctor, and they immediately took x-rays and urinalysis and everything. So cut a long story short, I hurt my back. Okay.
Yeah.
And the scans, x-rays, everything are okay.
My goodness. That's
I'm
so
on
fortunate.
Fosamax. I'm on Fosamax now, but the bone, there was no fracture.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
But it is, I can't sit. And I couldn't, I was in bed flat on my back for 3 weeks. And then I said, now I have to start moving. I'm going to, and I couldn't eat for anything for 8 days, nothing.
Really?
Yeah, because I had an adverse reaction to the anti-inflammatories. And so I was incredibly
Oh.
nauseous for the first 3 days. And so I said, I can take pain, but I can't take nausea.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even keep water down. That's when I got scared.
Yeah.
So I finally graduated to half a banana and didn't really lose weight. But here's the things that bother me now is I'm getting good physio in the back. We've
Mhm.
determined that it's recoverable, is
Mhm.
what the physio and the doctor say. But what really bothers me is that everything pushed forward. It was like being rear-ended in a car accident.
Mm.
So all my guts and everything slammed forward. I was bruised from my hips down to the backs of my knees, but 2 days later, my whole chest went black. And so that's why
Wow.
they were worried about the ribs. My ribs were so sore, I could hardly breathe. And I looked like I was pregnant. And
Wow.
even now, I still, I could show you. I really don't want to show you, but I will show you. Do you mind?
I don't at all.
You turn the recording off?
Yo, please. Yes.
Okay.